So welcome everyone to the Three Principles Global Community webinar. The Three Principles Global Community, or 3PGC, is a nonprofit organization that is committed to bringing an understanding of the three principles as introduced by Sydney Banks to people throughout the world. And as you can tell, we're so thrilled to have Dr. Judy Sedgeman. She's one of the original students of Sydney Banks and has been a principles practitioner for 35 years. She's shared the principles that have transformed the understanding of life with individuals and groups around the world. And with that, Judy, I will let you continue.
Okay. Thank you very much, Tom. And I'm very sorry, and I'm sorry to keep you too. So whatever you're doing, I hope it goes well. So thank you. So as I was starting to say, when our nature is to be at ease and joyful with life. And joyful does not mean happy, happy, yay, yay, yay. Joyful means the deep, beautiful feelings that are natural to us. I always think of little children are what George Pransky used to call the starter package. I don't know if any of you've ever heard him say that, but he said if you really want to understand the human starter package, just take a look at babies before they start learning about life. And babies get over things. They cry when they need something, and when the something is taken care of, they stop. And you know, generally speaking, they're delighted most of the time. They're discovering, they're full of interest in life, they're full of enthusiasm to see what's next. They're full of delight. And that's kind of what joy means to me. It's not related to external events. It's like a lot of people say, well, Christmas is hard for a lot of people. I know if many of you work in the field of mental health and see clients, you probably hear from a lot of people around Christmas time that struggle with their pressure to be happy, and to celebrate, and do all these things. And if they're struggling with something in life, or if they just don't feel the season becomes a burden to them rather than a moment to reflect on uh, joy and what it really means. So that's why I picked that topic for this time of year, because for over the many years that I've been involved in this work, I've talked to so many people at times in life when you're supposed to be, you know, just all yay, 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 happy, 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 let's go, let's have a fun time. And that isn't really the point. The point is to be at peace and accept life as it is. Accept it in peace. And that to me is the essence of having a joyful life, is to know that everything is, we don't really control anything but what we think about what's going on around us. And for people who think that we do, it's a tough life. So essentially what we can control is the experience of our own thinking and the way in which we entertain thoughts in circumstances and times of life when we need to call upon our own peace of mind, our own wisdom, our own capacity to draw from original thinking, and not to dwell in sadness and memory. Memory is always, a mixed bag because it contains everything that's ever happened and what we thought of it at the time. But in the moment, it's always a fresh start. We can always look at life fresh and see something deeper than we saw before. So when I talked about talked to Sani about what a topic I'd like to share, uh, I think there were some questions like, what, allowing joy? And I said, yeah, because that's the secret to life, is to know that if you don't um, get lost in your own personal thinking, that's how you allow joy. You just allow your mind to clear, and joy comes back. It's natural. And everything that we think that recreates the experience that we had when we first had that thought. Because whatever we bring to mind, that's the experience, that's what the feeling that we experience in that moment. And so when we dwell in problem solving over things that we're struggling with, or in things that we can't resolve, or in memories that are sad, or memories that are distressing, or even watching the news in the moment, when our mind gets our intellectual mind gets activated to not being present in the moment, but being present in our thinking about life, which is not the same as experiencing the moment. Then we don't allow joy to be the kind of the energizing principle behind what comes to mind. And I don't want to disturb anybody with this conversation, so I thought the first thing I'd like to do, since I've now introduced why I picked the topic, is to ask if anyone came to this event with a question, or with a concern, or with wondering about, or some thoughts about, why would we be allowing something like that? So if you have questions, or if you have something you'd like to share, or some question or some issue with the topic, or about the topic, or around it, that you'd like to bring up, now's a good time, and I will speak directly to what you want to talk about, not what I want to talk about. So
Yeah, that's
uh,
great. And if you would raise your digital hand, and
yeah,
if you don't know where that is, it's down below under the react.
yes,
And then you can raise your hand, and either
where the
Judy,
little heart is, which is kind
yeah,
of cute.
that's kind of cute. Well, either Judy or I will call on you. Go ahead, Patty.
Yes.
Hey, Judy, how are you?
Hi, good. How are you?
I'm good. I haven't seen you in a long time.
Nice to see
I
you.
love your topic, and I am finding that allowing joy has been a little bit twisty for people. They
Yeah.
don't quite understand until they see it.
Hmm.
And then when they see it, it's magical.
Yeah.
It's absolutely magical. And I love that. And I just wanted to take a moment to thank you actually for your book. I have a Thursday night Zoom group that we read books, and we're actually reading your book right now. And we absolutely love it. And it brings us joy every Thursday. And so
Oh,
I just wanted to thank you for that, because I think joy comes in a lot of different ways.
hmm.
And sharing experiences and being connected is probably one of the best
Hmm.
ways I experience joy, or
Hmm.
allow joy for that matter. So I
Yeah.
just wanted to thank you.
Oh, you're quite welcome, and thank you for sharing. I appreciate seeing you again. It's been a while.
You as well. Take care.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was thinking about this as you were mentioning books, and kind of allowing joy, as I thought the person who passed away, and that, in case many of you may have already heard this, but is Chip Chipman. And I don't know how many people on this call knew Chip, but Chip was one of the old timers like me, people that have been around way longer than me. Actually, he was friends with Sid before Sid had his experience. And Chip was one of those people that just brought so much pure joy into everything that he did. He was a person with, people say we had a great sense of humor. He was big, had a big smile, and all those things are true, but they're the natural after effects of the feeling state that he lived in. And it's so interesting that I almost forgot the time and missed this call, because I was writing a note to his wife, expressing that very thought, that's missing for so many people, the ability to just rush into life as it is, accept it, and make the most of it, and use your thinking to come to peace with things that are uh, not as easy to handle as other things, and to celebrate when that's appropriate. But Chip and Jan used to Chip was a kind of a folk singer, as a hobby, and Chip and Jan has a beautiful voice, and they used to sing together sometimes, informally, after meetings and so on, and And Chip had such delf. He wasn't, like a brilliant singer or musician. He was just a person who enjoyed, strumming and singing. And he had such self-deprecation about it, but it came from such a beautiful place when he and Jan sang together. It was just, it just lifted everyone's spirits. And that level of that to me was very representative of somebody who really had a beautiful relationship to living life, which is what joy is. It's just living in the moment and living life one thought at a time and accepting what is, because that's beyond our change. We can't change other people, and we can change the world over time by representing the possibility of being at peace with the world. And a lot of people kind of get kind of a missionary attitude towards the principles. I've got to get out there and share this and tell people about it. It's a great message. We need to spread it. But honestly, the most meaningful sharing of the principles is living from your own understanding of the principles purely. And that comes from a very deep place within us that's natural to us. You don't have to do anything except allow it. But we sometimes overwhelm it because we think, oh no, I've got to step in here and get this right now. I've got to, got to do this, got to do that. And you start using your thinking to come up with a strategy to enjoy life or to, share the principles. And really sharing the principles is walking around in the world with love and understanding and following the wisdom that comes to you in the moment. That's it. And I think the best example of that was Sydney Banks. I mean, I guess so. We all, those of us who spent a lot of time with Sid, really were always struck by the fact that when he spoke, when he started talking, about the principles, he came from this incredibly high, wise, amazing, insightful place. And yet in his day-to-day life, he was just a regular guy who had a lot of friends and a good time. And he was not pretentious. He wasn't, he always called himself lucky. He never said, well, I am the discoverer of this amazing thing. He was like, I was so lucky that I saw something that I just want to share it with people. I just want to talk to you about it. I just want to tell you. And then he would say to audiences all the time, who knows? Sitting in this room could be somebody that at any moment could jump way beyond my understanding and start to share, and I would be the student, and all of us would be awestruck. And that's how life is. We don't know. We get insight when our mind is quiet enough to see it. And he never felt that he was singled out or was special because of what he saw. He always encouraged us to keep looking, because who knows who's going to be the person to see the next big thing. And and we used to laugh at that because we thought we can hardly see what you're talking about, never mind the next big thing. But it's really true. I mean, anyone who's been around for a long time and lives in wonder and wondering what's going to pop out of the unknown as an insight for us, we're constantly surprised, by how much there is to see. Constantly surprised. And that is knowing that's real, that moment of clear-headed, open-minded availability to insight and wisdom and truth beyond the truth we see so far is always available to us. And it's also very ordinary in the sense that sometimes it comes in the thought, a thought that is useful to us in real life. It's like oh my gosh, you left the stove on, as you walk out the door. That's an insight. That's being quiet enough to be, awake to what's going on in life around you and thinking, oh, oops, I better turn that off. We're always, we always, I don't know if how many of you are familiar with the work of Krista Camsell, who is like just one of the great contributors to the work that's available now for teachers to share with young people. She's written books about the guide inside, she calls it, for elementary school and middle school children as a guide for teachers and a teacher's guide that comes with these books. And all over the world, people are starting to really use those books, and it makes a big difference. But her talk about the guide inside, and a lot of people who work in the principals use her books with adults because they're so simple and very powerful for that reason. Just a straight simplicity of, you're the thinker, and if you allow your thoughts to come from beyond your own memory and what you already know, you always have a guide inside. And that points to the same thing, that we're always being led back to our innate well-being. That's the direction in which we naturally turn when we're not trying too hard to get there. And trying too hard is overthinking it, basically. And when I first started with the principles, I had a kind of an academic approach to the principles, which was not well received, but at the time by anybody. But I remember I was the person who was always asking questions, and except that I'd been warned if I did that around Sid too much, he wouldn't want to spend much time with me. So just keep your mouth shut. So, but with other people, I was just like, I was the constant, like, well, what about this? Or, well, have you thought of that? Or how do you answer this? And I remember one time, I think it was Roger. Oh, Roger Mills. It was Roger who said to me, just stop thinking about it. You already know everything you need to know, and you're trying to find something that's already deep inside of you, but you're squashing it with all these questions. And it hadn't even dawned on me that wisdom was something that we already had. Because if you're an educated person, they teach you that the wisdom of the ages, you've got to study all the wise people to learn about wisdom. And the fact is that you don't. I mean, where do you think they got it? I remember one time I was at a conference in California, and the current president of the American Psychological Association at that time in that year was Charles Spielberger, who's a very highly regarded psychologist, and he was speaking, and he was also, at the conference listening to other people. Well, George Francie was one of the speakers, and George was talking about original thought, and the idea that insight is from beyond our intellect. It comes from a whole different source within us. It comes from the spiritual energy that flows through us. And I was sitting around, and I was actually in the bar sitting around a table having a drink after the meeting with several people, including Charles Spielberger, who said to me, okay, I know you work with the Pranskys. He said, now, I don't really believe in original thought. I believe that all the academic institutions, all the new books, all the new ideas are just recombinations of already existing thought. And he's talking about the fact that everything that there is to think has already been thought. And I said, man, that's really interesting, Charles. I said, so wouldn't you love to meet the guy that started it and had the first thought? I mean, where did it start? Where did it come from? He was like, well, that's rude. But it did leave him wondering. And the thing is that of course, there's original thought, because that's called invention. That's called innovation. That's called creativity. That's called something I hadn't thought of before. And that's allowing joy, is really allowing ourselves to celebrate the possibility that we never know what's going to occur to us. What incredible guidance we might get in our life if we just shut down a little bit, quiet, create a little quiet space for it to come into. And I always get a kick out of it. I have a lot of, I live in downtown Pittsburgh and I go to a health club to work out. And a lot of the women that go to that health club are always talking about, oh, I look forward to my weekly facial because I get so nice and quiet and I feel so good. You don't have to think about anything. And I just don't know where. I just never quiet otherwise. People are always desperately looking for quiet. And quiet is home base. Quiet is what we are, but for our thinking about how quiet we want to be. So I kind of, that's really a message that I hope that you'll play with. It's like when you start wondering, like, oh my gosh, this time of year happens all the time. It's like, oh my, I have so many things to do. And what about my Christmas cards and the kids and the presents and the food? And I got to make cookies and I got to go to this thing. And we get all agitated. And yet we're celebrating peace on earth, goodwill to men. Kind of amazing, isn't it? And quiet is where we go if we just shut down all those ideas and just live moment to moment with the guidance sign. So, Anna, I see that you have your hand up. Yeah.
Hi, Judy. It's good to
Hi.
see you.
Nice
Can
to
you
see
hear
you.
me okay?
Yeah, of course.
Thank you. I'm outside. I decided to sit and listen to you outside today, and I
Lovely.
was just listening to you, and it speaks to something that I realized a few weeks ago, that every time I get into some psychological match with life, uh, eh, I'm trying to figure something out. So the question came from inside myself. What am I trying to figure out?
Yeah, good question.
And, and at the baseline, and I feel that maybe this is something that we all share, is we're all trying to figure out how to be happy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's such a counterintuitive thing to realize that we don't have to figure out how to be happy, because as our mind settles, we will see clearly that we already have all those beautiful feelings we're looking for. So what you're saying speaks a lot to that.
Mhm.
And I just wanted to pass the question, because sometimes we could be trying to figure it out how to have a good relationship with our kids.
Mhm.
We could be trying to figure it out how to love ourselves.
Mhm.
Or, at the bottom line is we're trying to figure it out how to be happy. It's just that we're using a tool that is not designed to
Right.
find what we're looking for. It's
Yeah.
always designed to find fault, to look at what's missing. So as long as we're looking in that direction, we would always be, feeling like something is missing, because we're looking at what we don't have instead of letting the mind settle. And everything we are so lucky, most of us.
Yeah.
I sometimes don't even notice how lucky I am. So I think,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sitting outside, I'm breathing, I have, all my body is doing what it needs to do without me trying, and the way everything is working. There is so much working for me. But if I decide that I'm going to focus on what is not working, that's all I'm going to experience.
Mhm.
So I think we leave a lot of joy on the table, a lot of peace, a lot of,
Mhm.
recognition of who we are, when we are always trying to figure something out.
Yeah.
So and there is a different intelligence available. And I think what you're speaking to about the knowledge, it was so clear to me when you say it, because it's like, well, when you are little, you're told that the way to acquire wisdom is to read books and to
Yeah.
educate
Study.
yourself.
Work at it.
But nobody told to us about that innate intelligence that can inspire, that we can sort of grow out naturally. And even though we may have it, we learn to dismiss it. And sometimes we learn to be even be ashamed of it. Because when I was a little girl, I was pretty wise, I suppose. And the adults
Mhm.
were like, well, it's rude to, to say this, or
Yeah.
you shouldn't. And I was like, okay, I'll go by the book
Yeah.
and I won't hear the waters.
Yeah.
So I love this conversation, and I never see the end of the feeling that comes with, sharing time with you and with Chip. I really, I'm sorry for his passing. He was a wonderful man.
He was.
Yeah.
Your comments remind me of a story that I heard. I believe it may have been George Pransky that told this story, but anyway, I heard it at a conference, and having grown up in New England, I could really relate to it, because in New England, the New England states, the northeastern states, and we have very low bridges, old bridges that were built years ago. A lot of them are stone bridges, and they don't allow for the height of trucks
Mm.
as they've developed in the current era. So they always post, the limit, like if you're going to clear, if you have more than 12 feet in height, you can't go under this bridge. But that people don't believe it, and they try to squeeze under. And so this was a newspaper clipping, I believe, and I think George's brother may have sent to him. He still lives in Massachusetts, George's brother. And it was a newspaper clipping about this truck that got stuck. It started to go under the bridge, and of course the top of the truck got stuck under the bridge, and the truck was unable to back up and unable to go forward, and it was traffic backing up, and the police were there, and all kinds of people were standing around, and several people had gotten out of their cars to kind of walk up and wait and see what they were going to decide to do. And one man was there with his little boy, who was like 6 years old. And so they're saying, well, I don't know, maybe we could shave the top off the truck, get in there, and, I don't know what to do, where maybe we should spray oil in between the truck and the bridge, and maybe that would loosen it up enough to back up, and it's not that far in. And the little boy said, why don't you just let some air out of the tires? And some of you probably heard that story. Well, that's obvious, that's wisdom. It occurred to that little boy. That's a good idea. Just let some air out of the tires. The truck will sink down a little bit. You can back it out. And that's a perfect example of the fact that if you don't overthink things, wisdom will give you an answer. And I love that. It happens to kids all the time. There used to be a television program here that was called Kids Say the Darndest Things. And it was little kids' answers to adult problems, and they said the darndest things, and they usually turned out to be the simple answer to the problem the adults were struggling with. So anyway, Naz, you have a question, comment? Naz.
Judy, it's always a joy hearing you and seeing you. You're terrific. You're my model. Because you see how all what's in front of us, we could see it in a way where it's very healthy. And in this time, you're looking at joy, and you always realize how, the joy may be a divine joy, a joy that is very insightful, but unless we rest our minds and those kind of things. So you're always very inspiring to me. I really love
Thank you.
your experiences and what has brought you to this. Just like you were saying, you know, uh, death, in a sense, it's not about us. It just happens to the closest people sometimes where we feel it the most. But like in this year, Judy, one of the difficult times I know in my life, I
Mhm.
never would thought that my wife would have dementia.
Mm.
So now the joy that I have to find is more than just my role. I have to see the divine aspect of it, so
Mhm.
that I don't get contaminated in my way of handling things, from day to day.
Mhm.
Because without that perspective, uh, I would tend to lose heart. But no, I've been married. It's going to be this month 55 years. So
Mhm.
it's just another challenge. But
Yeah.
the joy that is yet you're talking about, it's
Mhm.
so powerful that we won't drown. We will not uh, see the worst of it. We'll always see the best. So I appreciate that, because I realize that even like uh, in Christmas time, all the experiences, all the way. What I did is I listed, some of the things like wrapping things, cleaning the house, and so forth. Um, and so we used to send out Christmas cards. Well, for
Mhm.
for for peace of mind, I told my wife, let's not send any of those. So the joy, I
Mhm.
I could feel more. The peace of on earth that you're talking about, I could feel more. But I have to let go of some tasks
Mhm.
that may not be at some point they were joyful, but
Mhm.
now they're not
They're
as
different,
joyful.
right?
But I really appreciate your beauty that
Mhm.
always surfaces your
Thank you.
wisdom.
You're so kind. The there was a beautiful woman that used to work in this field, and she happened to work in Bill Pettit's office when I was first learning the principles from him when I was working with him, and her name was Sue Odom, and Sue also worked with in different agencies and organizations as a part-time nurse. And one of the things that she worked with is people with dementia. And I remember one time we were just sitting around with lunch or something, and having lunch, and one of the secretaries in the office said, "Sue, doesn't it depress you to be working with these people?" And Sue said, "No, it thrills me."
No.
And so this person said, "Why?" And she said, "The intellect is irrelevant to them, but they live in the feeling." And she said that her greatest joy is to be able to walk into a room filled with appreciation and love just for the spirit and the soul of the human beings in front of her, and sit with them in quiet, and they feel it and they calm down. And sometimes they talk, and sometimes they don't. And sometimes it makes sense, and sometimes it doesn't always make sense to them. And she said, I just find that just a beautiful statement about the soul. So I thought I'd share that with you, because so many people that face that, we have expectations, especially of people we've known for a long time, that they're going to keep thinking the way they've always interacting with us the way they've always thought. And they don't, but they still feel love. And love is always the answer. So Sue's gift was that she never got frustrated. And she used to tell this story about this husband and wife, where the wife was suffering from early onset dementia, and the husband was frustrated. And every day when he'd sit down to breakfast, he'd say, "Well, what's my name?" And she couldn't think of his name. She knew he belonged there, but she couldn't think of his name. And so she would kind of like, get upset that she couldn't answer the question. And one day, Sue was there, and she said he came in and he did the same thing, sat down, poured himself a cup of coffee, and said, "Okay, now what's my name?" And she said to him, "Oh my goodness, I don't need to know your name. I know you love me." And and he was so taken aback. Sue told that story, and she said, she found the words to say what she could say. And she said he was so chagrined that he had put so much pressure on her, and it was a real learning moment for him, because Sue said, I don't know whether it helped that I was here and I've been with her for an hour or so before you came in the room, but he said, don't pressure people to answer questions. Just share the beautiful feeling and see what comes up. Follow their lead, see what they want to talk about. And I thought, I don't know, I've not had that much experience with it, but I do think that that's a beautiful story. And I think that a lot of people, when Sue told it, somebody suggested that she tell it to a group, because there was a group that met there, once a week. And she said, you should tell that to the group, because so many people in our neck of the woods were elderly retired people in Florida. And she did. And she said a lot of people in the room really thought, oh my gosh, yeah, I've been hoping that she could talk to me the way she used to, or he could tell the jokes he used to tell, or whatever. But that's wrong. I'm dealing with a fresh thinking in a person who's now using their mind differently. So
Thank you, Judy.
yeah, hold hands. Nice way to do it.
So Judy, we have Kate on now as host. So
Okay.
I'm going to jump on, but you can keep going in the spirit of joy and the
Okay.
holidays if you like,
Hey.
if you're able to. And then
Oh
people.
yeah, I absolutely. I feel very sad that I missed the beginning here. So I'm happy to keep going. And if anyone needs to leave because you weren't counting on me keeping going, then just don't worry about it. Feel free to leave.
Okay.
But thank you very much for your question, Naz. That's really beautiful. I'm sure a lot of people have that same situation. So are there any other questions? Oh, here's another question. Okay, Marlene.
Hi, Judy.
Hi.
Yeah, thank you for this conversation. I've learned that a lot of what I come to understand, I first see in other people. It's like, oh, that's interesting, that's going on for them, and consequently, of course. And I can see how we squash, or I squash, joy. And I was having a conversation with a colleague of mine, and her joy squashing is about all the judgment she has about herself and her performance, and how she feels guilty for other people's experience in life, and how she's trying to manage and control and cajole. And I thought, yeah, yeah, been there.
Been there.
Um,
Me too.
yeah, it's you're right. The allowing part is the willingness to let go of all that other stuff that we engage in, mentally. And yeah. So thank you. Good reminder.
Well, the times that are most the greatest opportunities for us to look inside and not outside are when things aren't going the way we want them to in life. And that's when we realize, you know what, I can't fix this. It's like, if there's potholes in front of your driveway and you keep getting flat tires trying to back out of your driveway, you got to call the city, because you can't fix it. But you can have the wisdom that tells you, hey, call the city, they'll come and fill it. But otherwise you're just sitting there going like, I don't know what to do about this darn pothole, and that's kind of how we get like, oh, what am I supposed to do now? Instead of like, I don't know what to do, and being okay with not knowing. And it's very difficult. When I was on the faculty for 14 years at WVU Medical School, and I was representing this work.